The small mountain town woke to bright sun, soft wind, and the smell of pine. June had come, and the valley felt alive again after a long, quiet spring. Shop signs were fresh with paint. A bakery window showed neat rows of warm bread. At the gas station, a map rack stood next to a cooler full of water and sports drinks. People waved to each other from cars. It felt like a good day for anyone who loved the hills. Maya and Ethan stepped out of their old blue sedan in the trailhead lot just after 9 in the morning. They were a young couple in their 20s, full of the careful hope that comes when life is just starting to fall into place. She had just been hired as a junior designer at a small studio. He had passed his exam to become a teacher. They wanted a short trip away to celebrate. The mountains seemed like the right place to breathe and think about the future. They moved with easy rhythm, sharing small tasks. Maya checked the laces on her boots. Ethan filled their water bottles at the spigot by the welcome board. A wooden box held the sign-in sheet for hikers. She wrote Maya and Ethan, June 2002, in careful letters. He added a small smiley face next to the date. It was a small, simple act, but it left a kind of soft footprint. They both laughed at the little face and said it would be nice to come back at the end of the day and underline it. A ranger truck rolled by, heading up the service road. The driver gave a quick wave. Ethan, who was checking the map on a board, lifted his hand in return. The main trail was clear on the map. It climbed to a wide overlook, then looped down beside a creek. But there was also a faint line drawn to the right, an older spur trail, less used and less shown. On their paper map, the faint line was hard to see. Next to the board, a small wooden sign once pointed to that spur, but the sign had cracked and fallen. It now rested behind tall grass where it looked like just another piece of wood. They started on the main trail, stepping into a tunnel of green light where sun filtered through leaves. Birds called from hidden spots. In a few places, snow still clung to shadows under logs, thin and gray with melt. The air was cool at first, then warm as the sun rose. They reached a junction where the path split. The left way was wide and packed, with clear footprints from many hikers. The right way looked narrow and private, a ribbon of dirt that slipped behind young fir trees. A faded stump held a nail where a sign used to be. Maya liked quiet places. Ethan liked little secrets in nature. A pool under a rock, a view you only see if you turn at the right tree. They looked at each other and smiled. The spur seemed to promise a quiet lunch spot away from weekend noise, so they took it. Their boots brushed past grass beads, still wet from morning dew. The air felt still, like the hill was holding its breath. By late morning, clouds gathered in a low ring around the peaks. The weather forecast at the motel had said, light afternoon shower, possible. They were not worried. Mountain weather often changed, and then changed back. The spur climbed in short, steep switches, then softened into a traverse along a rock face. Below, a small bowl of forest opened like a green hand. Up ahead, a ledge looked like a perfect place to rest. The stone was warm from the sun. They sat with their backs to the rock and shared almonds and an apple. Maya pulled out a pencil and drew the shape of the valley on a small notepad. Ethan pointed to a thin line where the creek shone between trees and said it looked like a silver thread. They took a photo with a small film camera, smiling wide. In the spirit of leaving a gentle mark, they used the pencil to trace their names quietly, where lichen had already lightened the stone. Maya and Ethan, 2002. They did not press hard. It felt more like a whisper than a shout, a way to say, we were here, thank you for the view. A breeze moved across the ledge. For a time, they said nothing. The mountain gave them that easy silence that makes you feel calm without effort. Around 1 in the afternoon, the light shifted. The ring of cloud thickened into a roof. The breeze cooled and carried a faint smell of rain and distant stone. In the valley, the silver thread of water went dull. They packed up. The spur continued ahead, looping toward the main trail, at least according to the paper map lines they could see. They chose to go forward, not back, hoping to meet the loop and make a circle. It felt like the right kind of small adventure. Rain. began as a light sprinkle, then turned steady. They stepped under dripping firs. The path narrowed and tilted. In one place, a fallen tree forced them off the tread for a few steps. When they came back to the path, fresh water made the dirt smooth and slick. Their boot prints filled and vanished. It was easy to think they were on track and also easy to not be sure. They reached a shallow gully where water ran like a thin sheet over packed clay. On a dry day, you could cross with quick steps. Today, it felt risky. Ethan tested it with a trekking pole. The pole slid a little, then held. They crossed slowly, breath quiet, hands out for balance. On the other side, the path rose and turned into tight brush. They pushed through. Branches tapped their jackets. The rain softened to mist, then stopped, then started again. The forest had its own rhythm, and they moved to it. By the time they reached a small clearing, the world had set into a gray tone. They paused, listening. The wind carried no voices, no other hikers, only drip and soft leaf sound. Maya checked the time on her watch. If they were moving slower, they could still make it back before dark, but it would be close. They agreed to push a little faster. The spur still did not rejoin the main trail. Instead, it seemed to feed into older, lighter tracks, the kind you get from deer or from people who once tried away and stopped. Back at the trailhead, the afternoon parking lot saw people return to cars. A family wiped rainwater from their faces and laughed about wet socks. A couple from out of town checked the map and decided to cut their hike short. At the gas station, clouds slipped low over the ridge, and the person behind the counter said the weather was strange for June. No one worried yet. People assume most hikers are smart and prepared, and that they will walk back into town with damp hair and good stories. Evening came, and the blue sedan still sat in the corner of the lot. A ranger doing a late check wrote down the plate number, then did a quick walk to the first mile marker. He saw nothing wrong and no sign of distress, just a wet trail and mist. He put a note in his log to check again at dawn. In most cases, hikers who are late come out early the next morning, hungry for coffee and a hot breakfast. Night fell with a steady, soft rain. Maya and Ethan found a shallow overhang near a cluster of roots where the ground rose against stone. They set their packs under the lip. They had a foil blanket and a light jacket each. They shared warmth and a quiet plan to move at first light. They were calm, even in the strange feeling of being close to the right path, but not quite on it. They did not yell. The hill held sound, the rain softened edges. It was a night of listening, of waiting, of small breaths. When dawn finally came, the rain had eased, but fog lay thick, like milk poured through the trees. They ate half a granola bar each. They made a simple choice: go down rather than up. Usually down means toward a creek, and creeks often meet main trails. They moved with care. The ground here had many half-paths, some made by animals, some by past storm runoff. They followed the sound of water. In one place, the ground gave under wet leaves and showed smooth rock. Maya tested each step with the flat of her boot before putting weight down. Ethan watched for any sign or cut log that looked like trail, work. By mid-morning, the fog lifted enough to see tree trunks in lines again. They found a narrow draw where water moved more clearly. They followed it. After another hour, they reached a place where the draw dropped and the sides steepened. They stopped and, for the first time, felt the edge of worry. It was not fear in a loud way. It was a slow, careful sense that they had to choose very wisely. They chose to backtrack a few hundred steps and move to the left side where the slope looked safer. This smart choice kept them from a risky move, but it also carried them away from a faint trace that, if seen, could have guided them back to the main loop. At noon, the ranger at the station took another look at the logbook. He saw the names Maya and Ethan, June 2002, and the small smiley face. He called the motel listed on the visitor card they had filled on arrival. The front desk said the couple had not checked out. The ranger called his supervisor. The supervisor called the sheriff's office. A volunteer phone tree started. People pulled on jackets, filled thermoses, and met at the lot. The rain had stopped. The clouds hung low, but the light was better. The first day of search focused on the main loop. Teams walked in pairs, calling names, looking for broken branches or dropped items. They did not go far onto side paths yet because the ground was slick, and the plan was to sweep safe areas well before risking steep or closed spurs. A map on the hood of a truck showed colored lines for areas covered. The older spur to the right of the junction was on the map, but the mark was faint and the label was smudged. Someone wrote a note. Spur. Check later if safe. The fallen sign near the junction hid under brush and no one saw it that day. Night came again. The team stood by the truck, quiet, drinking warm cups. The supervisor made a plan for early morning, more people, a dog team, a careful check of drainages near the loop. He made the choice based on safety and standard steps. In the dark, choices. Late May of 2025 came with a slow, friendly thaw. Snow melted from the edges of rocks like icing sliding off a warm cake. Streams spoke again after a quiet winter. The mountain smelled of wet earth and new needles, and the paths that had slept under ice opened one by one. On a Tuesday morning, a new ranger named Lena started her day at the trailhead with a thermos of tea and a small laminated checklist. She liked lists because they helped her see what mattered. Her first task was simple. Walk the overlooked trail, check for winter damage, mark any hazards, and note places that needed fresh paint on blazes. Lena moved with steady, careful steps. She had learned that the mountain rewarded attention. She listened for loose rock, watched for small slides, and looked at the edges of the trail where roots reached out like fingers. At the first junction, she saw what the map had hinted but did not make bold. A narrow spur to the right, less used, almost shy. It slipped into young firs, where snow had taken longer to melt. She made a small note on her paper. Right spur, light use. Check ledges. Then she continued because her plan was to complete the main loop first and return to side paths if time allowed. The overlook was calm. A thin cloud shelf hung at the far ridge. The valley wore a patchwork of green. On the way back, with the sun a little higher and the air a little warmer, she took the right spur. The first steps were tight and almost hidden under last season's leaves. Then the path widened where rock held the slope like a shoulder. She felt that pleasant quiet you get when you are somewhere slightly off the busy way but not far from safety. She walked another 10 minutes and reached a low ledge that faced the bowl of trees. The stone was pale where lichen had bleached it. She stepped closer, scanning for loose edges or winter cracks. That was when she saw the letters. They were simple, not loud, on a section of stone that faced away from the main wind. At first they looked like shadows or scratches made by chance. Then her eyes adjusted, and the shapes became clear. Maya and Ethan, 2002. The line below the date was faint, but something else made the word stand out. A soft, dusty brightness lay over the old lines, the way chalk makes schoolboard writing pop out. Lena bent to look closely but did not touch. The dust was so fresh that part of it looked like it had not yet blown away. She breathed out slowly, the way you do when a detail asks you to be careful. She took 2 photos on her phone and 1 on the small work camera she carried for reports. Then she sat on her heels and looked around the ledge for context. There were tiny crumbs of white, in a crease where the rock met a patch of moss. A few inches away, a lichen frill had a faint smear on it, as if brushed by a hand. On the ground near the wall she spotted a thin, soft stub, the last bit of a climbing chalk block, the kind some hikers carry to keep hands dry on scrambly rock. She did not pick it up yet. She had learned to document before moving anything. Lena's mind brought up what she'd read during training, the town's old missing case from June 2002. A young couple had signed in, taken a hike, and not come back. Files said the main loop had been searched. A storm had slowed efforts. Side spurs had been dangerous in the rain, and 1 spur had been marked for later, if safe. No one had found a key clue. The file had gone cold. The names on the stone were the same as the last line on that old sign-in sheet. Her hands felt warm and steady. She took more photos of the stone, the dust, and the small chalk stub, placing her pocket ruler next to each for scale. Back at the station, she pulled the old case folder. The paper had that dry, time-sweet smell. Inside were copies of maps, in blue pen, weather printouts, volunteer lists, and notes that looked careful and tired at the same time. A small photo showed the sign-in box with a hand holding a pen over a page where the couple's names were circled. There was a note about the right spur. Label faded, sign to replace, and below it, a date and initials. Lena felt a mix of softness and purpose. The mountain had kept a whisper for 23 years. Now a spring's thaw and a person's fresh eyes had made that whisper visible again. She sent a simple email to her supervisor with the photos and a short report. Observed names Maya and Ethan, 2002 on right spur ledge. Appears to have been retraced recently with chalk. Found chalk residue. Recommend reopen review. The reply came back in minutes. Good catch. Let's talk. Be cautious with public sharing until we check. She appreciated this tone. It was not about drama. It was about care. That afternoon, a storm skirted the ridge, and the station stayed quiet. Lena read through radio logs from the 2002 week. She traced the path searchers had walked. She found a penciled line that almost touched the spur, but did not go on to it because of rockfall risk during rain. A name appeared several times on those sheets. Harris, volunteer lead. She checked the roster wall and the list of retired helpers. Harris had moved to a nearby town, but still came by sometimes to fish the lower lake. She made a note to call him. News, even when managed gently, has its own small river channels in a town. One of the maintenance crew had seen Lena's photos on the workstation and, without malice, told his spouse over dinner that the old case might have a new clue. The spouse posted a careful message in a local forum. Ranger found writing on the right spur. Looks like the couple's names from 2002. The message was not meant to become big, but it pulled memory to the surface. People who had been around then left comments about that week's rain, the sound of the helicopter, and how everyone had hoped for a better ending. A person who ran the bakery in town wrote, "I remember making extra coffee for the searchers that Sunday." Someone else posted a scanned newspaper clipping from back then, a headline that looked larger than life now. By evening, Lena's work phone buzzed more than usual. A reporter from the weekly paper left a polite message asking for a quote. Two elders from the Community Advisory Board asked if the station would share more details in the next town meeting. A woman who said she was a friend of the couple's cousin called and left a soft thank you for not letting the memory fade. Lena told herself to be steady. She returned calls with care, saying the same simple thing. We are reviewing what we found. We will share facts when we have them. We want to give this the respect it deserves. The next morning, she hiked back to the ledge with a small crew. They brought flags, a clipboard, and bags for any items that needed collection. The air after rain felt clean like a new page. On the ledge, the chalk dust still lay where the stone sheltered it from wind. In one corner, the dust looked smudged, as if a fingertip had tested the brightness and then pulled away. Lena showed the team the best place to step to avoid disturbing edges. They marked a square around the writing and took more photos. The crew chief, a quiet person with 30 seasons behind him, looked at the letters and then at the valley. Old, he said softly, and also not old. They gently lifted the chalk stub into a small envelope, noted the location, and left. A flag near the wall creased to remind any visitor to step wide. On the walk back, Lena stopped at the junction where the spur met the main trail. The old post that once held a sign stood gray and stubborn, its top scar empty. She put a bright ribbon around it so hikers would see there was a path to the right. She also made a plan to install a fresh sign with clear lettering and a small use caution note, so no one would think the spur was a secret meant to be found only by guesswork. That afternoon, she called Harris, the retired volunteer lead, from 2002. His voice was warm and slow. He invited her to meet at the cafe near the lake. They sat by the window with cups of tea. He listened while she described the ledge and the letters, and then he nodded a few times like a person bringing back a box from the attic. We had heavy rain that week, he said. The spur was listed, but the slope above it was shedding small rocks. We kept people on the main loop planning to check that spur when the ground got safer. Then the weather turned again and we lost a day. By the time we tried to go, the plan had shifted to wider sweeps. He sighed, not in blame, but in memory. We did a lot of good work, and still we missed that ledge. It happens, but it stays with you. Lena told him she wanted to do this review gently, without making the older team feel judged. Harris smiled and said, "That's the right way. A mountain changes, and so do our tools. We did our best with what we had." He thought for a moment. "There's something else. I remember talk of a downed sign that week. Maybe the spur felt like a deer path without it. I wrote a note to replace the sign, not sure what happened after." Back at the station, the supervisor helped Lena draft a short, careful public note. It said, "During spring trail work, a ranger observed a historic inscription on a right spur ledge that appears connected to a 2002 missing person case. The inscription shows signs of recent tracing. We are reviewing records and will share verified updates soon. Please respect the area. Do not add markings or remove anything." They posted it on the station door and the official page, and they answered questions at the weekly town gathering. The room was full but quiet. People asked calm, human questions. What does recent tracing mean? Could it be a prank? Could the couple have returned quietly? Lena explained that the dust, the type of chalk, and the location suggested a careful tracing, not a rough scratch. "It looks like someone wanted the names to be seen, shy." Morning came clear and bright. The mountain felt fresh, like it had washed its face during the night. Lena and a small crew hiked to the right spur again with simple tools: a soft brush, a small mirror, a pen light, envelopes, and flags. They moved quietly. They knew this ledge was not just rock anymore. It held a piece of a story that many people cared about. When they reached the pale wall where the names showed, Lena asked everyone to stand back for a moment. She looked at the stone as if it were a map. The letters were there: Maya and Ethan, 2002, and the thin dust that made them brighter still clung to tiny shelves in the rock. Lena used the soft brush to clear a light fringe of moss around the writing. She did not touch the letters themselves. As the green curled away, something else appeared: a small straight line cut into the pale surface, then another, joined at a point. It made a simple arrow, not much longer than a finger. The arrow pointed down and a little to the right, toward a narrow seam where the wall met a darker slab. "Look," she said softly. The crew leaned closer but stayed careful. The arrow did not look like a crack. It looked like a choice, like someone had said, "This way." She lay on her side on the ledge, rested her cheek on the warm stone, and shone her penlight into the seam. A dull shine reflected back, not from the rock but from something smoother. "There's plastic," she said. To reach it without damaging anything, she took a thin, blunt probe from her kit and eased it into the gap. The object slid a little, then stopped. "It's wrapped," she said. "Maybe a small bag." The crew chief handed her a pair of clean tweezers. With slow, patient movements, she pinched the edge of the plastic and drew it out a bit at a time. It came free like a leaf from a book, crinkly old and stickier in places where time had pressed it hard. They placed the wrapped object on clean paper and covered it from wind. Lena did not open it there. She knew old paper could tear in dry air, and she wanted a quiet table, a camera, and the right light. She looked back into the seam with the penlight. The space now showed only rock. The arrow had done its work. Before they left the ledge, the youngest crew member, eyes sharp, heart steady, looked at a small pile of stones near a knee-high bush. "Is that new?" he asked. It was a tiny cairn, not more than 5 stones, set with care. They had seen it before but gave it no meaning. Now, after the arrow, it asked to be noticed. Lena took photos from 3 angles, then, using the mirror to see the underside, lifted only the top stone. Under it lay a black cylinder the size of a thumb. It was an old film canister, the kind people used before phones. The lid still fit, tight. She did not open it on the ledge. She placed it in a small bag, marked the location, and set the stones back exactly as they had been, because the place itself was part of the record. Back at the station, they spread clean paper on the work table, set the camera on a tripod, and turned on soft lights. Lena warmed her hands so they would not shake. She cut the edge of the plastic with tiny scissors. The plastic cracked a little, as old plastic does, but held enough to protect what was inside. She eased out a folded paper, the size of a postcard. The outside felt rough and slightly waxy from age. She opened it in 3 gentle steps. Inside lay a short note in blue pen. The ink faded to a soft gray blue. The date at the top read, June 2002. The handwriting was neat and simple. It said, "If found, tell our parents we're okay, we'll write, we just need time." The room went very quiet. No one rushed to speak. You could hear the low hum of the soda fridge in the hall. Lena took a photo of each line. Then she compared. The loops, the way the Y and OK dropped, the way the ampersand was drawn in the names even though the names were not written in the note. The hand felt young but certain, and the tone felt like a breath released. She placed the note in a clear sleeve and set it aside. Next, she opened the film canister. Inside was a tiny strip of paper, rolled tight. When she unrolled it, the paper opened in a curl. It held a few lines in the same blue-gray ink. A P.O. box number in a city 2 states away, a first name with a middle initial, and a simple plan. We leave by Friday. We will send a letter when we can. That was it. No long message, no instructions. Just a gentle sign. We are not lost. We are leaving on purpose. Lena felt her shoulders loosen. For years, the story in town had been heavy. Now there was a new line to read. She called her supervisor. He came to the table, read the note, and set both hands on the edge of the paper, not touching it, just grounding himself. "We will handle this with care," he said. "This changes the tone." They made copies of the note and the strip, printed, at life size for study. Then, to be sure of their eyes, they checked something else. In the old case folder was a copy of a camp registration card from the lakeside campground the couple had used the week of their hike. The card showed the couple's first names and the gentle round shape of their letters. Lena placed a copy of the card next to the note and the strip. The M on the card and the M in the first name on the strip had the same small, open mouth at the left. The T in the card name had a short cross like a dash. The T in the strip's middle initial showed the same habit. It was not a formal match from a lab. It was the kind of match that people who look at many words can feel with calm confidence. To be careful, Lena drove to the lakeside campground and spoke with the current manager. The office smelled like pine cleaner and coffee. She asked if old registration cards were stored. The manager pointed her to 3 cardboard boxes in a back room. They sorted by year. In the 2002 box, wrapped in a rubber band, they found the week that matched the dates. The original card did not sit there. Only a photocopy remained in the case file. But other cards from that week showed the same style of pen and paper. The manager remembered stories passed down about the searchers who came by the lake for water and warm food. "That week is part of this place's history," the manager said. "If you need anything more, tell me." Back in town, Lena and her supervisor agreed on a small public update. They did not post all details. They chose short, gentle words. "We found a historic note near the inscription. It suggests the couple left by choice in 2002 and intended to contact family. We are working to verify. Please allow us time to reach the right people." The weekly paper wrote a quiet story. It did not shout. It carried a photo of the mountain, with a caption about patience. People in the town read the piece and felt a warmth they had not felt before. The library added a new card to the display. Sometimes a clue is a kindness. That night, Lena went through trail camera images, again this time with a new thought in her mind. A camera near the junction had taken one frame on a foggy morning a few weeks earlier. 2 figures stood by the old post where the ribbon now hung. They were not young. Their backs were straight but gentle, the way people stand when they have learned how to carry weight without force. One had a small drawstring bag in hand. The other lifted a palm to brush the side of the post lightly, as if greeting an old marker. In the next frame, they were gone up the right spur, moving the way people move when they know where their feet belong. Lena also checked the self-pay envelopes from that same week. The lot had a metal box where hikers placed fees with car plates and initials. One envelope from a dawn hour had only 2 letters written in neat small script. They matched the couple's first letters. It could have been anyone. It could have been them. She made a note, possible but not proof, and put the envelope copy into the file. The case notebook changed shape. It was still about people and a place. It was still about care. But now the headings on Lena's list looked different. She wrote, "Locate family contact. Confirm if letters ever arrived. Check P.O. Box records from 2002. Review out-of-state public records for name with middle initial. Ask campground manager about any forwarded mail from that time." She also added a human note. "If they are out there, we should let them speak for themselves." In the town, talk turned from worry to wondering. At the cafe, people spoke in soft circles. "Maybe they needed space," someone said. "Maybe they were young and overwhelmed," said another. No one was angry. People had known heavy news before. This was not heavy. It was light, like a door opening to a room you had once closed and left in dim light. The couple's families, who had grown older too, kept private counsel. They had carried this for years, and privacy felt right until facts were clear. Lena visited the ledge one more time that week. She sat by the pale wall and looked at the letters. The arrow she had found felt like a friend now, honest, simple, pointing without drama. She thought about the person who carved it. Maybe it was Maya. Maybe it was Ethan. Maybe they did it together. She pictured 2 young people in 2002 after a long night under an overhang, deciding at dawn to leave a message that said, "We are okay. Please trust us." She could imagine their hands, cold but steady, placing a note in plastic and sliding it into the seam. She could imagine them building the tiny cairn and tucking the film canister beneath, making sure someone could find it one day. She stood and looked out at the valley. In the bowl of trees, the creek shone like a ribbon again. Time had done what time does. It had moved forward, and it had kept safe a few small things. Those small things, now seen, had changed a story that had felt frozen. Lena smiled, not wide, just with peace. She thanked the Montato Sai. The next morning, Lena set her mug on the ranger station desk and opened a fresh notebook. She wrote the date at the top and drew a short line under it. Then she wrote a simple goal in neat letters: "Follow the paper trail with care." She looked at the small, clear sleeve that held the note from the ledge. It lay on the table like a quiet heartbeat. The words were soft and firm. "If found, tell our parents we're okay. We'll write. We just need time." Time had passed. Now it was time to read the trail the note had left. She needed a partner who was patient with records and kind with people. In a town like this, everyone knew who did careful work. That person was John, a reporter at the weekly paper who loved small facts and asked gentle questions. He never pushed. He just stayed curious and fair. Lena called him and said, "I have a research job. It touches the old case. Can we meet?" He said yes at once, and they met at a corner table in the library where the big windows made everything feel open and honest. Lena showed John a printed copy of the note and the tiny strip from the film canister. She did not pass him the originals. They stayed safe at the station. John read the lines twice, then set the papers down carefully. "This is simple," he said, "and it changes the tone." He took out a legal pad and began his own list. "P.O. Box records," he said. "Public records for name plus middle initial. Any marriage records, any business records, alumni notes, old phone listings. We follow the lightest brush of their lives, not to expose them, but to understand what happened." Lena nodded. "We give them the chance to speak for themselves," she added, "if we find them." The P.O. box came first because it was direct. The strip had a number and a city 2 states away. John knew a contact at the big post office from a past story on holiday mail. He made a polite call, then a second call to the smaller station listed for that box. The clerk on the line had a warm, steady voice. John explained that he was trying to confirm if a P.O. box from 2002 had ever been opened and when it was closed. He did not give names at first. The clerk looked up old entries in a system that still held basic dates. Opened June 2002, she said. Closed December 2002, marked as no forwarding. John asked if any letters had been returned from that box around that time. The clerk did not have details, but she remembered something else. I started here in 2004, she said, and the older clerk told me about a young couple who came in quiet and kind, asked many questions about holding mail, then stopped coming by. She said they always smiled and said thank you. It was not proof. It was a human detail that fit. They thanked her and hung up. Lena wrote, P.O. Box closed late 2002. No forwarding. Possible memory. Kind couple. She circled the words, no forwarding. That detail could explain a lot. If family letters had been sent and then returned, that would make people worry more. If the couple had moved again and not set a new path for mail, then letters would have drifted back like leaves on a slow stream. Next, they went to public records. John knew how to search without leaving heavy footprints. Some records were online, some lived in quiet drawers at county offices and small libraries. The strip had given them a first name with a middle initial. Lena and John tried different combinations. They searched in the city of the P.O. box and in nearby towns. At last, in a county clerk's index 2 states away, they found a gentle clue, a marriage certificate from July 2002. The names matched the couple's first names, but each name was paired with a middle name that fit old family patterns. The surname on the record was new, shared, and simple. 2 witnesses had signed. One witness was a person with a last name that matched a friend in an alumni directory from the couple's college year. Lena and John requested a copy of the certificate through proper channels. When it arrived, it had the small raised seal on the corner. It was simple and real. 2 young people had stood in front of someone kind and legal and said yes to a shared name. The date was not long after the hike week. They were moving fast, John said, not in judgment, just noting the timeline. They wanted a fresh start. From there, they searched for that new surname. A business license appeared in 2005, in a mountain town far from the first city, but still in the same region. The business was a small bakery with a cheerful name. The license listed 2 owners with the shared surname. There was no big splash, no photo in the paper, just a quiet entry that said, "Here we are. We bake bread." Lena smiled when she read the address. The number sat on a street near a park. She pictured morning light, paper bags of rolls, and people who liked to feed others. In 2012, the record showed a sale of the business to a new owner. The file's note said, "Owner relocation closer to mountains." It fit with the kind of people who had once chosen a quiet spur and a ledge with a view. It also matched a short note in an alumni newsletter from 2011. "We're well and grateful. We hope to travel and learn more about new places." The note had no address, only a shared surname, and a tone that felt like the couple, soft, direct, and private. Lena wanted to be careful about contact. The couple's old families had carried a story for a long time. Any message must be gentle and clear. She and John drafted a letter together. They read each line out loud to each other to hear the tone. In the end, the letter was plain and respectful. "Dear M and E, we use initials to protect your privacy, in case this lands in the wrong place. A ranger found your names on a ledge this spring and a note, dated June 2002, that said you were okay and needed time. We also found a small paper with a P.O. box number. We believe you left by choice and built a life with care. People in the town have held your story with respect. Your families wish for peace and clarity. If you are willing, we would like to hear from you so we can close the old file with truth and kindness. If you prefer privacy, we will honor that. Your mountain remembers you. With care, Lena, Ranger, and John, local reporter, working quietly and respectfully. They did not include phone numbers. They created a new email address made only for this contact, one that did not reveal personal details. They included a small P.O. box of their own at the ranger station for replies by mail. They printed the letter on plain paper, no logo, and signed by hand. But where to send it? The business sale file had a forwarding agent's contact. The alumni office had a policy for forwarding letters if the subject agreed, and they would not share home addresses. This was good. It protected privacy. Lena called the alumni office and explained the situation in careful general terms. The office agreed to send the letter to the last known contact email for the couple, with a note that it was from a ranger and a reporter seeking to share verified facts, not private life. The forwarding agent also agreed to send a sealed envelope to the last mailing address they had on file from 2012, marked Address Service Requested, which would return any updated address if the Postal Service could find one. And then they waited. Waiting is its own kind of work. Lena kept doing her daily tasks, checking trails, clearing small branches, greeting hikers at the station door. John wrote his weekly stories about school concerts, a new bike rack downtown, and the early cherries that had surprised gardeners with their sweetness. In the evenings, they each checked the new email address once, then closed the tab. No refreshing, no pacing. They had promised care, and care included patience. A week passed, then another. At the library display, people added memories about the 2002 search that were gentle and kind. The supervisor at the ranger station reminded everyone to keep details private until facts were sure. No tours to the ledge, he said again. We protect the place and the people. In the third week, an email arrived. The subject line was simple: about your letter. Lena saw it first, took a breath, and called John. They opened it together on the station computer so there would be two sets of eyes. The message was short and warm. Dear Lena and John, thank you for your careful words. We are safe. We never meant to cause lasting worry. We were young and needed a quiet path. We left notes as best we could, but some letters did not land. We came back this spring to visit the ledge at dawn and to make the names readable so the mountain could speak for us if we could not find the right way to speak for ourselves. If you think it will help the town and our families, we can meet in a quiet place. We ask for simple kindness and no pictures. We will bring a small box of papers to help close the old story. With gratitude, M and E. Lena and John read the note, twice, then a third time. The room felt very still, as if the mountain had stepped inside and sat down at the table with them. Lena typed a reply with careful hands. Thank you for trusting us. We will meet you on your terms. The ranger station has a small back room with a window and a door that opens to a quiet porch. No cameras. No recording. Only us. We will not share details that you do not wish to share. We want to close the file with truth and care. Please tell us a day and time that feels right. They sent the message and sat for a moment without speaking. John finally said, This is the right way. Lena nodded. Yes, she said. This is their story, not ours. We just hold the door. 2 days later, another email came. The time was set, a bright morning the following week. The note was signed the same way with letters only. It included one more line. We will bring morning rolls, old habits. Lena smiled. She pictured the bakery from. The morning they chose to return felt kind and bright. A slow breeze moved through the pines behind the ranger station. A jay called once, then flew off toward the creek. Lena set 2 cups on the small table in the back room, then placed a plate. In the center, ready for the morning rolls the email had promised. She checked the window latch and the little vase with daisies. She wanted the room to feel safe. At 9:05, there was a soft knock on the side door that opened to the quiet porch. Lena walked over and opened it. A man and a woman stood there, both in their mid-40s with calm faces and steady eyes. The woman carried a paper bag warm with fresh bread. The man held a small wooden box with a sliding lid. They both smiled, not wide, but with relief. You must be Lena, the woman said. I'm Maya. The man nodded. I'm Ethan. Thank you for meeting us like this. Lena stepped back and waved them in. John stood and greeted them with the same gentle tone. There were no cameras, no notebook on display, just a pencil in John's pocket, and the quiet promise that this meeting would be about truth and care, not noise. They sat, and for a moment, no one spoke. The smell of warm rolls filled the room, soft and friendly. It felt like a pause before a door opens. Maya eased the paper bag open and placed 4 small cinnamon rolls on the plate. Old habits, she said with a little laugh. We still bake, Ethan added. Now it's mostly for friends and neighbors where we live. We wanted to bring something made by our hands. Lena thanked them. She poured water, then waited. She didn't want to rush their story. Ethan set the wooden box on the table and slid the lid back. Inside were paper stacks tied with simple string, a few old photographs, and 2 stamped envelopes that had never been mailed. On top lay a folded copy of a marriage certificate with a raised seal. We brought proof, he said quietly. Not because we owe it, but because it may help close the file. They began at the beginning and their voices were steady. In 2002, both had felt pressure building like a slow weight. Their families were loving, but the love came with heavy plans. Where to live, when to get married, which jobs to take, how soon to start a bigger life than they were ready to hold. We were grateful, Maya said, but we felt like our choices were already chosen for us. We wanted a small life first. We wanted to learn how to be together before the noise. They took the hike to think. They were not running away from harm. They were stepping away from too many voices. When the storm came, they sheltered under an overhang and waited. In the morning light, they made a quiet choice. We carved our names, Ethan said, not to mark the rock forever, but as a sign to ourselves that we had made a real decision. We left a note in the crevice, with a promise to write. We set a P.O. box number in the film canister. It felt careful and kind. They intended to send letters within days. They even wrote first drafts that very week, which they now placed on the table. Soft paper, blue ink, gentle words. But small mistakes stacked up. One envelope went to an old address. That had just changed. Another letter sat because they argued over the tone, how much to say, whether to include the new surname they planned to take. We opened the P.O. box in June, Maya said. We checked it for months. We got one postcard from a friend saying, "Where did you go?" and a few ads. We kept waiting for the right line to send. When the box finally closed in December, the clerk asked if we wanted forwarding. We said no because we thought we would send our new address with a real letter soon, and then time moved. They had seen a small notice about the search in a paper a few weeks later, the kind that lists brief community updates. It scared them. We thought if we called then, it would pull everyone back into a storm, Ethan said. We told ourselves we would write after we were settled, but then we moved again for work, and then again to be closer to mountains, and the longer we waited, the harder it felt to begin. We regret that deeply. We didn't want anyone to carry worry for us. They slid a photo across the table. It showed a small shop in 2005 with a chalkboard sign that read, "Open at 7." In the window were 2 trays of warm bread. Another photo showed them in aprons, flour on their sleeves, smiling in a way that looks like sleep had been short, but hearts were full. They spoke about early mornings, first customers, and the old man who always asked for the end pieces because the crust tells the truth. The bakery had been their first home together. In 2012, they sold it and moved nearer to high country. They took seasonal work, wrote short notes in an alumni newsletter because it felt like a soft way to say we're okay, without opening gates they were not ready to open. They had come back to the mountain this spring at dawn, before most hikers. They stood at the ledge and saw their pencil-soft names nearly lost in lichen. We brought a small chalk block, Maya said, the kind climbers use, and we traced the letters so their shapes would show. We wanted the mountain to help speak for us if we still couldn't find the right words. We left another small slip, tucked where the first had been. They looked at Lena. You found it, Maya added, Thank you for reading it as it was meant. John asked one careful question. What do you want the town to know? Ethan took a breath. That we are safe. That we built a life with care. That we never meant to leave a shadow over anyone. If there is a way to tell this story that brings peace without turning us into a picture on a screen, we are ready to help. Maya nodded. And we want to apologize. Not in a loud way, but in a steady way. We should have written sooner. Lena thanked them for their honesty. She asked if they were ready for her to notify the families through the proper channels with a simple status first and more detail only if they agreed. They said yes. Please tell them we will write to them directly this week, Maya added. We have the right addresses now. We already wrote drafts. We just needed this door to open. They ate a roll each, quietly, as people do when their bodies need a gentle moment. Then they opened more of the box. There were copies of receipts from the campground, photocopies of early business licenses, a few small photos of them with friends at a park, and a stack of letters returned in 2002 with "Moved no forwarding" stamped in red. Those stamps had hurt then, now they explained much. You can keep copies for the file, Ethan said. We'll take the originals back, but the story belongs to the place as much as to us. By late morning, they had spoken all the important parts. Lena summarized in simple words to be sure. In 2002, they chose a quiet exit. The storm and mist spur turned it into a search. A P.O. box closed without forwarding. Time made the choice heavier. They built a life. They returned to the mountain to trace their names and leave one more waypoint. And now they wished to close the old file with truth and care. Maya and Ethan agreed to each line. Lena walked to the main office and, with her supervisor, updated the case status in soft, clear language. Located, safe. Voluntary departure. In 2002. Documentation received. Families to be contacted for closure. She printed the page and placed it in the front of the old folder. The paper sounded like a small exhale when it slid into place. A few days later, the library hosted a gentle community evening. There was no big announcement, only a note on the board. A conversation about patience, hope, and the mountain. Chairs filled, but the room stayed calm. Lena spoke first. She did not share private details. She told a short version of the story that focused on the mountain, on the careful work of searchers in 2002, and on the kindness of people who keep an open heart for years. Then she said, 2 people who were once the center of a worry are here tonight. They wish to offer a simple message. Maya and Ethan stood, not at the front, but among the chairs. They did not invite photos. They did not share their new home. Maya said, sometimes people need space to grow before they return. Please check facts. Please lead with care. Ethan added, we are grateful to a town that carried our names with kindness, not judgment. People did not clap loudly. They nodded and smiled. After, a few older neighbors came up one by one to say small things like, I made sandwiches for the searchers that week, and I'm glad you're well. No one asked for more than the couple offered. It felt like placing a stone on a cairn and walking on, lighter. The next morning, as the sun warmed the east face, Lena hiked with Maya and Ethan to the right spur. They walked in quiet, step by step, the way people do when they know a place holds part of their heart. At the ledge, they stood together before the pale wall. The names were still bright from spring, the letters soft as breath. Lena had brought a pencil and a small piece of chalk. She said, we don't encourage writing on rock, but this is yours, and it already exists as a record of a story that helped many people. If you would like to add a last line, you may, and then we will leave it to weather, the way all stories return to the mountain. Maya and Ethan looked at each other and nodded. Together, with careful hands, they wrote a small, simple line, under the old date. We came back to say we're okay, 2025. They pressed lightly, not carving, only touching the stone with enough chalk to make the letters clear. When they stepped back, the words looked like a promise kept. They stood there for a long minute. The valley below moved with a quiet wind. The creek flashed like a ribbon. A hawk turned once in the high air. Then they packed the small chalk, brushed crumbs from the ledge, and began a